Everybody, I wanted to welcome you to our webinar today. We really appreciate everybody joining us, and it's an introduction to business process modeling and notation for higher ed, funky text as we call it. So hopefully you can identify with that moniker. But with that, a couple of just housekeeping items that we want to be able to cover today. So in webinars like this, we're going to have everybody on listen only mode. Of course, we're working to get the chat thing resolved, but so once that gets resolved, use the chat feature, for questions. And, if you're not familiar with where it's at in Zoom, it's down in the control bar and you should be able to, access it from there. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, have a raise your hand feature in Zoom. So please do that. And I'll be sure to monitor that and, pose questions accordingly. And please do ask questions. That's what makes these webinars great. We want to get lots of input, get the dialogue going. So please don't be bashful there. And finally, you can adjust your audio settings by clicking on the little caret, on the arrow next to the audio settings label. So just if you're having any issues with hearing things just fine, please click there.
I think I fixed the chat, Kevin. If everybody wants to give the chat a try, let's do that.
Okay, yeah, if anybody wants to throw something out there like where they're from, where they're joining us from, that'd be great to just have some of that community share going on there. But so everybody, I'm Kevin Mullen. I am the director of higher education sales here at Process Maker, and again, very much appreciate you joining us today for this introduction to process modeling and notation for higher ed funky text. So the webinar is going to be we'll be good about time. We're going to go right up to the top of the hour, and we'll get you free after that. But the person of the show here is really Joy Youngman. She's the presenter that's going to take over controls here for just a second. She's our product manager for the higher education division at Process Maker. She has 25 years of experience working in higher education. So a great resource for us, and honestly for all of our customers out there. They love to have chances to share stories and just, connect with Joy and talk strategy. She's worked directly in the institutional setting, doing enrollment and admissions operations, financial aid and IT enterprise applications. So she's covered the gamut. She's worked indirectly with hundreds of institutions while working for data integration, document management and workflow automation vendors who serve higher education customers just like you. So when Joy wasn't on the institutional side, she was on the vendor side right here, so never far away from it. She joined Process Maker in March of this year, and so with that, she really brings a lot of knowledge on packaging automation solutions to higher education, and that's really what we want to explore today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joy.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today. What we're going to talk about is first, I'm going to give you just a little bit of background. I know a lot of, we're still getting our name known in higher education as Process Maker. So I'll tell you a little bit about who we are. And then I'm going to talk about what is BPMN, which is business process modeling. I think people probably have heard of that piece, but the and notation piece of it was new to me when I joined Process Maker. And so I thought, what, I bet it's probably new to some people in higher ed as well. We're going to talk about some of the common tools, free tools that are out there, and some that have licensing and are paid, and they run the gamut of being kind of low and introductory to very sophisticated. And then as part of the webinar today, I'm going to draw, and if you met us at either the CRED conference or at EDUCAUSE, you might have picked up one of our little whiteboard and dry erase markers that has the exercise. Well, there we go. It has the exercise design panel on it, if you will. And if you don't have one of those, a sheet of paper and a pencil or a pen will work just fine too. So, or you can follow along if you want to try it in PowerPoint, Google Sheets, or any other tool. You can follow along with those, but I won't be able to, I will not be able to assist with any kind of technology. That's why we're going old school analog paper and pencil today for you guys. All right then, so Process Maker. Oh, I see Kevin said that to remind you that we're gonna have a prize giveaway at the end. So a lot of you may have registered for the webinar so that you could get in the drawing. We're gonna be doing a drawing at the end of this presentation for the Sonos Bluetooth speaker. So stick around to the end for that. So when I joined Process Maker, like Kevin said, I actually worked twice at the University of Tampa. I call myself a swirling higher ed person because I've kind of gone back and forth. Sometimes they call us boomerangs, right? I've gone back and forth between the institution and ed tech. But when I came to Process Maker and we talked about our mission, vision, and purpose, I thought, you know what, I can resonate with that as someone coming out of higher ed. So our mission at Process Maker is to empower change makers. I consider myself a change maker. If you're thinking about process improvement, then you're a change maker. But we empower change makers to simplify the way custom business processes are built and run. And our vision is that there's always a better way to do something. And the reason that we do this is because we have to make every second count. And I do think that that's important in higher ed. Our students have an expectation, our faculty have an expectation of the best use of our time as possible. So we like to enable our change makers to build and automate complex enterprise level processes in order to make every second count. Our timeline and kind of our corporate history, we were actually founded in 2000. We had our first university customer in 2011. But the big game changer for us happened in 2019 when we partnered. We are a platinum partner with Ellucian, and we are Ellucian's workflow product. So if anybody on the call today that's an Ellucian customer, let us know that. But we are what they term Ellucian workflow. Our system is agnostic. It does not matter what systems you connect to, but Ellucian, we are a platinum partner with them. So we now have probably a little over approaching 250 universities using Process Maker today. In 2021, we raised some funding and got some venture capital. And this year, Process Maker has put a focus on creating a higher education practice. And that's where Kevin and I have joined the company to create awareness and a larger reach inside higher ed, and not just through Ellucian. All right, so let's get into why we're here today. So the other thing that I realized when I came here, my last role at the university, I was the director of enterprise applications. And one of the things that we did was we helped the functional departments select software. And a lot of times we were having to shop our own closet and see what kind of tools we had already in-house before we went and bought something. But many of those things were business. They needed a way to automate business processes for their students and faculty and staff. So joining here, I started hearing a lot, of course, because we are a business process modeling platform. And so I kind of heard about that, and I've drawn diagrams as part of my roles in the past. And I've worked with different document imaging systems that had workflow components to them. And so I think a lot of us have been kind of used to this idea, but a business process Gartner defines as an event-driven end-to-end processing path that usually starts with a customer request and ends with some sort of a result for the customer or the student, right? But the customer could be a faculty member, it could be staff, and it could be students. So a lot of times these business processes are often cross-departmental and sometimes even across organizational boundaries. So for example, at Ellucian Live last year, we talked to one of the customers using workflow that was, they had multiple campuses all over the United States. And so they had specific business units within each of those campuses, but then they often had to have processes that crossed the different campuses and the different entities. So that's kind of what we're talking about. So what are some higher education business processes that you perform every day? And it might get you thinking. Feel free to put those in the chat too, but some of the things that come to my mind and some of the things that we've seen within our customers is transfer credit evaluation is a big one. And we've done several webinars on that. We have one tomorrow. If you're interested, let us know in the chat and we'll get you the link to that as well. But some of the things that I would have used in my role was like event management. A lot of colleges and universities rent out their space either to the public or internal constituents like students and clubs and organizations, and so the event has to be managed with facilities, with room scheduling, with audio visual requirements, equipment requirements, catering, things like that. And that certainly would be a cross-organizational, cross-departmental type process. Very popular on our platform but just day-to-day stuff that we deal with in higher ed. Grade changes, major changes, class schedule changes, travel and expense reporting, HR onboarding and offboarding, in the IT department, user account requests, or for facilities maintenance requests, things like that. We have a list, I'll show it to you a little bit later, but over 150 different types of processes around a campus that have been built on our platform. So where generally is the institutional knowledge of these processes? So oftentimes the business process within our functional areas, especially, are in people's heads. It's in that institutional memory. Sometimes it's in like Word documents, might be in SharePoint somewhere with, in terms of like procedure manuals or rules, worksheets. So these types of things inevitably get created and exist in any business, not just higher ed. And a lot of times with very little governance around them in terms of documenting it in a correct way. If people even know that it's there and documented, it's not lost in some shared directory or SharePoint or something like that. And there's probably not enough governance about keeping them up to date and making sure they're maintained long term. So that's kind of where business process management comes in. It is the practice of codifying, optimizing, and continuously improving, operations or processes, especially those that would be kind of considered institutional knowledge, institutional IQ, that a lot of times, and we've seen this in the last couple of years in higher ed, that walks out the door when people leave. And higher ed was impacted, like every other business over the last couple of years, with people who changed jobs because of the pandemic, or they retired, took that as the opportunity to go ahead and retire. The Great Resignation certainly has impacted those kinds of things when we have churn and turnover in the people who are the ones that really know what the processes are. So when you're thinking about the ways that you would document your processes, think about what's easier to quickly grasp. And which one would it be for you, right? A procedure manual that's in a book, or some long, like, ongoing Word document that's kept on a shared drive, or a visual representation like what's on the right over here of what this is, a business process diagram. So I believe that this is certainly something. And in my last role, we had a lot of types of processes or procedures, if you will, and some of them were kind of audited because we were an ISO 27001 certified IT shop. And so we had a lot of things that were in procedures manuals that were documented, textually. And then we had some where we had gone ahead and we had used Microsoft Visio and created the business process diagram. And we referenced those all the time. We actually had it for our vendor selection process, how we, what we went through for all of our departments to select new software and onboard them, have security reviews done, accessibility reviews, and things like that. So we did draw a swim lane diagram, and we used it as a reference to make sure that, someone didn't keep it in their head and forgot to do a step. So that kind of brings me back to what is BPMN. So business process modeling and notation. So I hadn't heard this before when I came to Process Maker, and maybe I'm behind the times, it's possible, but I thought to myself, well, if I had never really heard of it in those terms, maybe other people hadn't either. Let me know in the chat, had you heard of BPMN, the and notation piece of it, very long ago, or have you known about it for a while? So it is a common language, a common taxonomy, if you will, to document business processes. So I think everybody's at some point probably seen, one of those diagrams that says, this is the step and this is who's done it. But I didn't know that there's actually an industry standard called BPMN. It's actually BPMN 2.0 at this point. It provides a way for us to pictorially represent our business processes. The symbols are the industry standard, so they mean very specific things, but they're also super easy for business users as well as technical users to understand. So I did a little bit of research on this, and it's used a lot by business analysts. It's used by project managers a lot to document a process. And so there is an industry standard, and you can learn about the industry standard. One of the first courses that I took about it when I first heard about it was on LinkedIn Learning, and you could learn a certain amount on LinkedIn Learning for free, and if you wanted to take the entire course, you had to pay for it. But we also, and we'll send you all this. We also have a free certification course that you can take for free to learn the taxonomy or learn the notation. So what are the elements of BPMN 2.0? Well, it's a pool. So a pool is this big outer square, okay, on your piece of paper. If you picked one of these up at Educause or CRUG, it's got it's already pre-printed with the pool. If you're going to do this exercise with us today, manually get your sheet of paper and just draw a big square around your paper. Okay. And so then these lanes, each one of these is called a swim lane. All right. And then over here, you have events. So there's start event, intermediate events, and end events, and they're colored in green, yellow, and red. You have tasks, which is the rectangle box. A gateway, which is like a decision point, is the diamond, and data objects, obviously it's like a little sheet of paper with the corner folded over, and the data store is your typical icon for a data archive. So these are there's a lot more of the standard symbols that you can learn about, but these are the most common ones that are used. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to document a change of major process as an example today. So get your paper or get your whiteboard. I've got mine here, and I'm going to use Google Sheets or the Google presentation, Google Sheets, as an example. Now, be prepared. I'm going to tell you in advance, I am going to fumble my way through this because I have a magic mouse on my Apple and it does crazy things. And then Google Sheets also does crazy things. So I may bumble through this, but this is the reality of using one of these tools. Now, other tools that are out there, there's free tools that are out there. Lucidchart is an example. You can get a free subscription to Lucidchart to draw these kinds of things. I think Camunda. Actually, I'm going to go forward here. You can do it on pen and paper, right? PowerPoint, Google Slides. A lot of institutions have Microsoft licenses. You can see if you have access to Visio. So those are some of the free things that you can use to draw process diagrams. So in a change of major, and I already got us started on this, but in a change of major process, so what you do is you name your pool. So if you're doing this at home, put the name of your pool over here to the left side, and I'm going to write that change major. Okay, and then the first thing that you have to do when you're getting ready to draw one of these is you have to think about who are the people and who are the systems, and not necessarily like a specific person, but what is their roles. So in a change of major process, of course, it's going to start with the student, right? The student is the person who is requesting the change. And so we're going to have that top swim lane, go ahead and add student as the name of the first one. And if you can see, I'm just kind of writing this into, I know that's a little blurry here. I'm writing it into my, my sheet as well. The other person that's usually involved in a change of major process would be probably their academic advisor and the registrar's office. Now we're going to go and make this kind of short and sweet. Some probably could argue that maybe the current advisor with the current major, if advisors are assigned by like a college or a program, like maybe if they were a nursing student that they were trying to change into or out of, is one I can think of, where you might want to have two advisors. And in that case, you would just add another lane for the second advisor. So but we're just going to do with one approval by the advisor, and then the registrar who is going to actually make the change in the student system. So I've got my 3 lanes named by the 3 personas or the people or the systems who would be interacting in this process. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, there goes my magic mouse. Okay. So I'm going to draw on my, in my diagram, in the first swim lane for student, I'm going to put a start event, which is a circle. So I'm going to actually here, I'm going to take this off of presentation mode and just make this bigger so we can see. All right. All right. So now I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over here, and I'm going to drag the start event into the student lane. And then the advisor already had one here. The advisor is going to have a task. So the student, this start event is going to be filling out a form. We can actually do that here too. So the student starts it and then they fill out a form, and I'm going to put this on here as a web form. And then the advisor is going to have a review screen. And then what you do is you draw arrows between them. So I'm going to choose an arrow, and I'm going to go from the start event to the web form, and from the web form to the advisor for the review screen. And then so the advisor is going to review the request of the major change, and then they're going to make a decision. So that's a gateway. So the decision is either going to be, are they going to, yes, they're going to approve it, or no, they're not. So I'm going to copy and paste that gateway and drop it over here with the advisor. So the steps that each one of them is doing goes into their lane. So from here, I am going to add an arrow that goes from the review screen to the decision. And this decision is approved. Make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. Okay. All right. And so if it's a yes, approved, then we would have a review screen then for particularly for the registrar's office. So I'm going to copy this and put a review screen here at this step. And from here, I'm going to take an arrow, and I'm going to go from here to here. And this arrow, I'm going to call, I'm going to put a text box here, and this is yes, approved. And if it's not approved, then I'm going to send an email to student here. So then I'll draw an arrow from this gateway. Whoops. From this gateway to the email. And then if it's not approved, then this will do an end event with the student. Oops. So that's an end. All right. Oops. All right. And then if it is approved, then it's going to route to a review screen to the registrar. The registrar, if they approve it, we could have another approved gateway here for the registrar. Oops. Told you the magic mouse. I'll use my arrows. So from here, and if this one's yes, then we will put another task over here. And this one will be, now I'm going to do what's called what I call low code. We're going to enter to the SIS, right? So if it's a yes here, we're going to enter it to the SIS. And if it's not, then we can, so let's see, this would be the yes. And the no, maybe the no, we send it back to the advisor. So I will copy this. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and this is actually going to be, instead of a review screen, maybe this is going to be an email to, maybe email to the student. Let's make it be an email to the student. Do that. And then from here, that would also be the end. Okay. And then down here, I would enter this into this SIS, and then I would copy this and paste it here. And this yes, then would end the process at an end event. Okay, so that's kind of a what I call low code, and using Microsoft Visio. And on your screen, you can draw the same thing, right? Or if you want to, if you have other steps, then add additional swim lanes and add all of those steps. This is usually the hardest part, I think, in building out some sort of a process, is getting all the people, this maybe not necessarily students, but you could ask the students what they, how they want to do this. Their reply is probably going to be, well, is it mobile? Can I do it on my phone? Can I do it in my, from my, from wherever I'm at? The advisors are going to want to know the same thing, but they're going to need to see what the student is requesting. They may have some additional steps in here that might be things like set an appointment with the student, and then they meet with the student, and then they approve it or deny it. You could even have another start event with the advisor. So maybe the student walks in, and so they would start on behalf of the student. Right? So maybe the student walks into their office and meets with them, and they make a decision to, to change. So then maybe the advisor also can start, and then it would pick up into the rest of the workflow, whether the student started it or if the advisor started it. So you could do different things like that. So this would be an example of a simple workflow. You can get very granular in this workflow, but this is a simple diagram that you could then use as documentation for your process. All right, so we talked a little bit about, let me go back to slideshow. So we talked a little bit about some of those free tools that are out there. If you guys don't mind, if you use something to do this that I don't have listed here, enter it into the chat, and maybe other people might be interested in finding some of these free tools that are a little bit more sophisticated than Google Slides or PowerPoint. Visio's a lot nicer. The Lucidchart as well, because they kind of snap to the canvas and it's easier to draw things than inside Google Slides. But Google Slides is free. Also, just sometimes, when we're in a meeting with our different functional groups, we can meet with them and actually use a whiteboard in a classroom as well to do some of these things. So like to work on a process, and a whiteboard's nice because you can erase it and rearrange things. But let me show you what a true process automation platform would look like. So Process Maker is an example of one. A lot of times different some of your document management systems may have some workflow capabilities in there, but I wanted to show you what the same process would look like inside of Process Maker. So I'm logged in here to my little sandbox, and I'm actually going to create a new process. So this is, I'm going to draw the same one. So this is change of major. And this is, I'm just going to put webinar practice on here. And I'm going to categorize it so I can find it later. This would be registration, records, and I'm going to save that. Save. All right, and so it is going to prepare me a canvas. So this is, you've seen this here. I have a few more different types of BPMN components that are over here on this left-hand side, like sending an email, doing a PDF generator. I didn't use them in my example because they're hard to draw with a dry erase marker in Google Sheets. But let's say we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to draw a pool, and this will show you kind of how easy it is versus using it in Google Sheets. And I am going to name my pool over here, change major. And then I'm going to add a lane for a student, and whoops here. So this lane is going to be student, and this lane is going to be advisor. And then I'm going to add another lane here. And this one is going to be registrar. And then I'm going to draw my start event on here. And my start event here, this is kind of nice. So the difference between drawing this process and paper or in one of those low, what I would call still an analog, yes, it's digital where you can draw the diagram like we did in our little Google Slides here, right? The difference between this and then true automation platforms is I'm actually going to have this do the work. So as I'm drawing my process diagram, I'm also building the automation aspect to it behind the scenes. So in this case, my start event here is going to be, I can have it be an actual start event. I can have it be a timer. So it starts on a particular date and time. It can be a signal coming from another workflow. It can be a signal coming from an outside system. It can be a message start event, something coming in from an email from another system. So maybe you have a form already built and you want to have it, you put a webhook on it and it can start the process. You can also have it be a conditional, like it only starts if certain conditions are met. So in this case, I'm just going to have it be a regular start event. And then my next field is going to be a task for my advisor. And actually, on this particular start, let's go back to the start event, because on this start event, I'm going to have it be a web entry. And the web entry, if I have, I can have it be authenticated behind my firewall, so it actually authenticates the user, or I can have it anonymous if I need this to be posted on my public website. I'm just going to do an anonymous one here. And then you build screens, so I can use a screen, and if I have the screen already built, I can actually choose it from this list. And if not, then I'm just going to put I'm just going to select a thank you screen here. So I have the actual screen that I would create. I'll just pick one here, but and so this actually now has become, you can see it's got checklists, and I actually can see which screens, or I can build a new screen using the screen designer. And I'll show that in a moment. But this then becomes the actual thing. And then once you have the web entry, it gives you the URL that you can use and that you can paste on your website, right? So that's how easy it is to kind of start adding a form to be starting and kicking off a workflow. So then the form task for the advisor could be the same thing. You can copy and create a screen for that, and then you would select it here. And then you can have different timers. You can have various email notifications that are having. So all the configuration for what's happening here at the advisor step or at the student step is being configured in the panel over here. This is meant to be what we call a low or a no code platform that is easy for people who are not technical users. I'm no programmer. I'm not writing scripts. I'm not writing JavaScript. I'm not writing a bunch of things. I just want drag and drop events to build my process. So I am going to have a different form here for my advisor. And then I'm going to add my gateway. A gateway, there's several different types of gateways in BPMN. There's an exclusive gateway. That means that the answer is either a yes or a no. And it has this little symbol of an X in the middle. It could be an inclusive gateway, which means that it's got kind of like if then else. If this is true, then it goes down this path. If not, then it looks and sets the next bit of logic. So that's an inclusive gateway. I can also have a parallel gateway. A parallel gateway has the little plus, and that means that for every different branch, it has to go through each one, but you can have them go simultaneously. The inclusive gateway is what you would use if you needed to go through one and then go through another, but go through all of them. The parallel gateway goes multiple branches at the same time. And then an event-based gateway means that it waits until a certain thing has happened. It could be a timer. It could be that another task has happened and then the next one goes. Actually, I said that wrong earlier about the inclusive. The event-based gateway, and it has a different symbol here, and it has different rules. But we're just going to do the exclusive one, just a yes or a no. And then if it's not approved, then it goes back to the student, and I'm actually going to do the send email up here to the student. And then I'm going to add my connectors. So here I'm going to add my flow. It's going to go from here to here, and from here to here. And then you can actually call your flows. So like this is a no. And this one, we would have another task for the registrar's office here. And this one would be the yes. You can notice here, this is where we would have the expression. So if you were doing something that had if then logic, you would do the expression here. And then the form task for the registrar's office. And then we did a gateway for them. And that was a yes or a no. We'll do another task. We'll connect them all together. And then we'll put this over here. Are we doing on time? All right, we'll add that last task, which was, this one was enter to SIS. This is, actually, I got too many here. Let's do this one. This is enter SIS. And then the end event. All right. So each one of these tasks then is configured, and then the platform actually makes it run. So then in this process, then you could have, you could build then the forms that are associated with each one of these and then kick off the entire process. You can also have like the emails, each one of these can have an email notification at each step, and you can configure those right in the panel as well. So not only have you very quickly drawn a process, but now you've made it do all the things that you that you want it to actually do, and it becomes a little mini application that you don't have to be a programmer in order to build this. So that's kind of the benefit, one of the benefits of having a digital process automation with the BPMN taxonomy, so that you can start with documenting your processes, but then also take it through onto a platform that can actually do the tasks, because you can configure it right in the same platform. So I'm going to stop here and see if anyone has any questions. You can do it through the question panel. You can add it through the chat. Before we kind of wrap things up for today. No, I don't see any questions. If you think of something, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip right back here to my slideshow. And I want to just kind of talk a little bit about some resources that we will send you. So I have a BPMN tutorial and examples, and also the BPMN 2.0 standard. I've got an access to a class where you can take a free BPMN certification course. It's going to give you a series of exercises, business processes to build. And it's very beneficial. Today was just kind of a taste. And then I'm going to show you the list of 150 processes built on the platform. So we do have some questions. Do we have to use DocuSign? No, you don't. We have the ability to connect also to Adobe Sign, and then we have signatory capabilities within the platform ourselves. So we could actually, we have the ability to do a digital signature, but then because we're authenticated, but using your SAML or your Active Directory, that would also count for authentication of the user. So you don't necessarily have to have a signature. So we have the capabilities of building forms the same way DocuSign does. But we would authenticate a user for the signature piece of it. We are looking at adding that capability for our banking segment. So I expect to have it within the next 6 to 8 months on the education side as well. The other question is, can we hook into different connectors such as GrabSign or SignNet? As long as there is a API capability for those or webhooks, then yes, we can connect to them. So if you have specific things, I can look into that with our product management team on our platform side, but we connect to so many different things. As long as there's an API, it's generally pretty easy to make a connection to different systems. All right, so some of the different use cases, we will send you a link to this in PDF form. It's a 2-page document that kind of just gives you an idea of all the different types of things that higher education customers have built using our platform. So I showed grade change. We do a webinar, pretty extensive transfer credit process, but we've had most of the business processes around student records and HR, but then there's pretty much every other department: facilities, IT, finance and accounting, student affairs, academic affairs. But one thing that I found that was interesting, especially if you're on the if you're on the technology side, a lot of the customers who had our platform in place prior to the pandemic, they actually had a really easy time of building out a lot of forms and workflows related to COVID because they had us already in place. And so they were very quickly able to throw together a process with a workflow, approvals and routing, and then create the forms that they could post on their website for asking for accommodations, remote work, vaccination statuses, and all of those things. So having a platform that when you get a request coming in to do some process and you want to automate something, you have a toolkit in your closet that's pretty sophisticated to build these types of things. And if not, it's still a good idea because of the attrition and turnover. It's still a good idea to use the BPMN taxonomy and draw out those process diagrams so that that's actually something that you becomes a living and breathing document with that business process to keep it up to date and accurate. All right, so Kevin, do we want to go ahead? I'm going to stop share. And if we have other questions, feel free to do this, but I think Kevin's going to be decking up our little drawing for the Sonos speaker. And I appreciate everyone who's stayed with us today. I'm gonna stop sharing.
I will share the screen and you all can see the drawing happen live, so it can, if everybody's ready on the edge of their seats.
Yep.
I'm ready to spin. I think I have everybody loaded in here. There's a few other folks that had registered and I think they popped in but maybe had to leave, but I'm going to kind of, we're going to get somebody that's here real time ideally and spin it again if we don't catch somebody that's physically in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see, Diane P. Sorry, I almost misspoke. Is Diane in the room, in the house? Do we see Diane?
I don't see Diane.
Okay.
I would go ahead and
I can remove her then, right? And I can spin again. Hopefully this goes fairly quickly. Do we have Joseph G in the house? Do you see Joseph?
Yeah, I do see Joseph.
Joseph, comment in the chat if you're there, bud. You there? I see him. I can unmute him, right?
Yes, he's there. He just commented in the chat.
Okay, great. We have a winner. So
Joseph,
I'll message you offline and get instructions on where to ship that. We really appreciate your participation, Joseph, and everybody. I wish everybody could be a winner, but it didn't quite work out that way today. But we really thank you for joining us. We'll send out the follow-up information on the the links that Joy referenced, and just feel free to reach out with any questions, anything that comes up after the fact. We'd love to have more dialogue with you and just help you solve for challenges that you're experiencing there on your end. So with that, have a great day. Enjoy. If you have any closing words, go ahead and throw those in there now.
Just thank you. And if anybody has questions on BPMN, if you want to take our training course, it's free. Otherwise, there's resources out there on LinkedIn too. Feel free to follow up with us. I'm open to having any kind of discussion. Thank you for joining us today. And you guys have a great weekend. All right. Congratulations, Joseph. All right. Bye-bye. That'll conclude our webinar.